Hello again, Pat. This is going to be reflection number 4 on TGNC recovery, so trans and gender nonconforming recovery.
All right. I know your clinical work is focused on the TGNC community. What have you learned specifically in regards to substance use services there?
Yes, so just to even say what I mean by that is I do work in the adult recovery program at the center, but I run the TGNC recovery groups. One is a community group where anybody can drop in, and we welcome any recovery practices, from harm reduction to abstinence to like, I'm not even really sure, but I think I might have a problem, to like, I just want to shift my relationship to some substances and not others. So that's called Kaleidoscope. And then I run an actual, it's called TGNC recovery, in the abstinence-based adult program. And then most of my individual clients are also happen to be trans. So yeah, a lot of my clinical work is about the TGNC community. I've learned a lot. I mean, some of it I went into it kind of knowing, but I've learned that there aren't a lot of services targeted, like substance use services targeted to TGNC people. The center certainly has one of the most extensive programs, and there aren't really many others. I've learned that a lot of places could not be considered trans competent, so that creates a real issue for referrals. And I think I mentioned somewhere along the way to you that part of the work I've also done is I've drafted a screening for substance use services, whether it be inpatient, outpatient, residential, detoxes, to try to screen how competent they are. And it just kind of ranges from do you have gendered bathrooms, to can your staff use they them pronouns. And the goal there is actually going in knowing that most places aren't going to check, be able to, even the center cannot do that. But to get a sense of if I were to try to send a client to one of these places, they would be able to choose what they value more than the other thing. If it's really important that their pronouns are spot on or as close as spot on as possible, but they're still okay being on a gendered ward, let's say, okay, they get to choose, they have more information. That's the ideal. But in doing those screenings so far, the competency is pretty low. And so that, I went into it knowing that, but that's not amazing. I guess there would be a future also where in getting all this feedback, you can develop recommendations and maybe trainings or whatever, who knows, but there's more stuff that can be done with that. But so that is what I've learned. But I've also seen say the Ali Fournier Center, where I used to happen to work, which is, it's the nation's largest server of for LGBT homeless youth, and they don't have a substance use program, but they just started a new role called the transgender substance use counselor, which is amazing. There's certainly overlap between AFC and our youth services, but this is a great connection. And that person I have the closest role to them. And so they reached out to me and said, what, where do I send people? What do I do? Where can I actually, confidently make referrals? And I was like, here's the tea. Also send them my way. Send them to my drop-in group. But yeah, so it was a real conversation. But that gave me some hope that other LGBT services are seeing the need for hot-spotted services for our community. But also this idea of maybe there's a coalition to form out there. There is a coalition to form out there of folks who are doing TGNC specific substance use work and harm reduction work, both. So,
well, yeah. So knowing that you've been working in a space that's for the entire LGBTQ community, I'm wondering if there is anything specific to a trans clientele that you've noticed.
Yes. Yeah, so the LGBT Center obviously serves everybody, although they are critiqued for many things, and one of them is their like competency level with trans clients, or their trans folks not wanting to show up there as much, and you're like, why? Or they're not having enough trans staff. So yeah, well, the first thing I say I would recommend is that there be more trans staff. That would make TGNC clients feel a heck of a lot better. When I took over the TGNC groups, that actually came about because the director of the trans TGNC care coordinator there was laid off, and they were one of the only few people laid off, which I think speaks volumes about what that program prioritizes. And they called me. They called me actually in a little bit of desperation, and were like, "Look, I really want you to take over these groups because I don't know what's going to happen if I don't have somebody that's ready to say yes right now, and I really want, like, for the clients, a solution and a good solution." And in showing up for the first time when they were kind of leaving and I was entering, they were like, "Oh, thank God. We thought they were going to give us a cis person, or we thought they might take away these groups." And so, honestly, those are two moves that could have happened conceivably there, and that I don't think it would be great if those clients never even had to worry about that. So more TGNC staff. As far as just working with trans clients, I think there needs to be more competency training for the cis staff that we have. They often will turn to me to ask me questions about trans clients they have, and as a peer, I'm happy to support them, but I also shouldn't be the person they're asking necessarily. The administration there should have some answers, and they should also feel more confident than they do sometimes in answering questions. So there's something missing there, and yeah, if they can't kind of give clients a sense that they are with it enough, those clients may not be telling them things that they could be. I would also say, like, there's a real mismatch in practice in the groups in general about practices like pronouns or whatever, and it's something that I've had to bring up more than once, and because clients have brought it up and said, like, well, I'm in these groups and I'm the only one who's expected to say my pronouns, basically, because I'm the trans person, and we're supposed to be modeling that to the whole clientele, and they're expected to do that, everybody, but it's not really enforced because perhaps folks don't even realize why that may be an important practice. So there's some knowledge missing in the staff and staffing missing in the program. That's what I would recommend first for trans clients. I don't know if I can speak to what trans clients need that's specific, but yeah, just services that they can rely on so that they can feel safe and free to talk more openly about the things they need to talk about.
Can you make any recommendations going forward for TGNC recovery services?
Ooh, I think I kind of just did. Well, for the services, the broader services, I can think of one program that's not LGBT specific that has an LGBT track, an outpatient program that has a component just for trans feminine people, which is amazing. But that's the only one I can think of in the city. And I know plenty of kind of LGBT mental health spaces that don't necessarily have trans specific services, right? Like AFC just got that. So I would recommend that they think about making specific tracks. If they have an LGBT track, making specific programming. Something I've heard before from like LGBT services is like, oh, we don't have enough trans clientele to justify making a TGNC group in the first place, and we wouldn't get attendance because of course you're reporting to the state and you're reporting to whoever, so you need to like show something for it. So okay, you don't have enough trans clientele. How do you get trans clientele? Maybe come back to my recommendations about like, you know, the staff and competency and outreach from trans people. I'm also the TGNC outreach specialist, you know. And then for your staff people, don't just have one person, trans person on your team who does all the trans things, who answers the trans questions. Like, I also need support and peers, and I can't be the authority. I shouldn't be the authority either because, you know, I'm not the only voice in this community, you know, for these practices. So like, yeah, there just needs to be all around more trans people, and then like specific services. And so I guess that also means like there are trainings here and there, and I've gone to some few, but that are trans specific in regards to either harm reduction or substance use. And I think folks should be compelled to go to those. What else? Well, I mean, if you're doing outreach, there's a big overlap, you know, between different communities. Right now, everything's a little bit different, but like, there's definite overlap with harm reduction work and then like sex workers. And I think that there should be more communication amongst like substance use services and harm reduction workers, who are in the community working with trans folks. I guess those would be my recommendations. I certainly have more, but I think that's enough. Okay, that ends this reflection number 4. And then we're going to do the last one. It's going to be COVID-19 and recovery.